Hey everyone, welcome back to the Vectra AI podcast. My name is Tiff. I'm a product marketing manager at Vectra AI, and today I'm joined by Gokul, who's a senior director of product management. And today we're going to talk about Vectra AI detection of attacker abuse of Azure cloud. So with that, let's start with my first question for you, Gokul. So how do attackers target Azure during an attack? Can you walk us through that?
Absolutely. Uh, Thanks for having me, Tiff. So attacks in the cloud primarily begin with credentials. So um, unlike what we've seen in network-based attacks, which in which there's a lot more of malware and things like that. When it comes to cloud, attacks tend to be relatively shallow and fast,
Mm-hmm.
all all originating off of compromised credentials. The hard part about these attacks is that the credential compromise may happen outside the cloud.
Mm.
So this could be, a dev user who has certain um, privileges in the public cloud, is a victim of some kind of social engineering or phishing or anything else of their email. And given how identity is federated across the enterprise, access to one federated resource essentially is no different from accessing every other federated resource. And that's how attackers are increasingly making their way into the cloud. And once they, so, the attacker could get federated credentials to enter ID by a variety of means. They could then, discover what they have access to, and then move laterally into the cloud. And this is all now that figuring out that there is no figuring out in all of this. I basically have credentials. There are
Yeah.
published, documented APIs for the cloud that I just get to query and find out what I can do.
Yeah.
And once I know what resources or services I have access to, I'm just using more APIs
Mm.
to whether it is discover, whether it is to persist, whether it is to move laterally. That progression is
Yeah.
much simpler. And
Right.
so that's what makes attacks in the cloud um, very fast
Mm.
and very hard to detect because the
Yeah.
compromise happens typically outside the cloud.
Yeah, yeah. And another challenge is that it's very hard to distinguish between whether that's a legitimate access or a malicious attacker, right, with credential abuse. So,
That's right.
yeah. So let's double click on that and talk about why is it so challenging for defenders to detect such an attack?
Yeah, it starts, there are two aspects to it, I think.
Mm.
One is the anatomy of the attack itself, but
Yep.
even before that, I feel like there are, when I speak to customers and organizations with this kind of a hybrid cloud footprint, in many cases, organizationally, the SOC does not even have the right level of visibility and access into the entire cloud footprint. So
Mm.
it, I cannot tell you the number of times we've deployed one of our capabilities into the customer's cloud, and the first reaction is, "Wait, what? I didn't realize we had something deployed in this region, or I did not realize we had this account," things like that. And so, as a defender, that is sort of
Mm.
your first starting disadvantage, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And from there, it is just continuously a game of catch up.
Mm.
So first and foremost, like we spoke about, identity compromise is hard to detect,
Mm-hmm.
very fast moving, and the span of what an attacker can do is really broad.
Mm.
So the idea of I secure these five services really well out of 200 services in Azure is not very useful, because if the attacker has a credential, they can leverage any of the other services just as easily to execute an attack. So that is reflected in, one, it's harder to detect these breaches, and once they're in, they can do damage really fast. It doesn't matter to an attacker whether I'm destroying, one VM or 100,000 VMs. It's
Yeah.
all the same. And so um, the the cost of a breach is higher,
Yeah.
because I have very little stopping. I have few ways to stop an attacker from doing the damage that they threaten to.
Yeah.
The second is essentially, as we look at an organization's IT footprint, it is
Mm.
hybrid by design.
Yeah.
So they have certain access, certain um, assets on premise. They have VMs in the cloud or in a virtual data center. They have cloud and platform services in Azure, and of course Microsoft 365
Mm.
productivity suite, all these with that one thread of identity running through them. But then all of the security tools out there today look at each of these in isolation. And
Yeah.
when you look at attack behaviors in just one of these areas, it seems rather innocuous. Um,
Mm.
the the real um, the real specter of this comes across when you actually piece together the attack as it progresses
Yeah.
from on-prem to identity to productivity suites um, to pass. And especially as now we start to have data spread across all these, and
Mm.
AI tools deployed in the enterprise that can essentially pull data from all these different places,
Yeah.
that the disadvantage of siloed visibility is just, it's massive.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then, the third thing is almost an artifact of this siloed visibility.
Yeah.
You have tools that are just giving you a fire hose of alerts. There's no common thread tying it together. And then
Mm.
you have to deploy tools on top of tools that will pull from all these places as sort of secondary, tertiary levels, and try to piece attacks together.
Mm.
But oftentimes you're stuck with, you know, a number of alerts that are not correlated to any actionable entity.
Yeah.
And as a result, prioritization is in this very archaic
Mm.
um, stack of critical, high, medium, low, right? And
Yeah.
so, yesterday I spoke with a customer who has 20 higher critical alerts every day in a small environment. What
Yeah.
do you do with that, right? So
Yeah.
these are the challenges um, that SOC teams we speak to today are facing as their organizations move to the cloud. And
Mm.
the organization is not waiting for the SOC team to catch up, right, and get to
Mm.
where they need to. The organization has business goals and they are go, go, go.
Yeah.
And so it's the SOC teams that are left to sort of
Yeah.
keep
Catch
up.
up. Yeah. And they can't catch up as well because attacker, as you said, is moving at lightning speed and they can't
Yes.
deal with this. They can't investigate like 20 alerts, 20 urgent alert. And by the time they reach the third one, then the attacker is probably causing damage, which is really hard. So then what is the key to defending against an Azure attack then?
Yeah, so we've in different threat surfaces or domains of IT, we've looked at this problem for nearly a decade now, right? Like, so this
Yeah.
is not the threat surface is new,
Mm.
but the philosophy is something that we've carried with us for a while now. And
Yeah.
so the Vectra platform is built ground up um, to address these very challenges.
Yeah.
So we look at the world in three layers.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with coverage in terms of what do I have visibility into, um, and what do I find as malicious behaviors in there, and
Mm-hmm.
then clarity, which is very quickly being able to arrive at a decision of you know harmful or harmless,
Mm.
and then the ability to go deeper, determine blast radius, stop an attack, things like that. So that's control. So if we were to apply um, the Azure problem
Mm.
um, and take this framework, I think first and foremost, what we're doing is we take the best data that is available.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not just activity logs, but we've looked at this log type called a resource log,
Mm-hmm.
which every service has its own. They are not standard, but they have useful information for security about a given service. So, we curate what we pull in,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have we have detection algorithms for over 40 novel attack behaviors,
Yep.
and so that sort of bubbles up the um, what's really bad, not
Mm.
just what is unknown or novel or
Mm.
interesting. That's not it.
Yeah.
This is we compare these behaviors with attacks in the wild or simulated attacks that our security team runs and says, and we're able to say, yes, this is definitely bad. The second, when it comes to clarity, we look at, we have coverage across all these six different Microsoft assets
Mm-hmm.
or threat surfaces. And so we the the behaviors that coverage surfaced, we attribute them to an entity, a principal, and we pull in behaviors from all these five or six different threat surfaces wherever you're deployed, to craft a single narrative for the SOC analyst. And then we use that to prioritize whether something needs to be investigated right away or not. And this results in not critical, high, medium, low, but this results in an unambiguous stack rank order based on a score from 1 to 100.
Yeah.
Right. So if you see something that is red, and you just on the response screen start from
Mm.
the top, make your way to the bottom,
Yeah.
and that's how you go about it. And
Mm-hmm.
finally, when it comes to control, we've done a whole lot in terms of enriching the raw logs
Mm.
that we get from the Microsoft Cloud, with human readable names, with stitching together interesting context from other services into these logs, things like that, just to make the investigation process really snappy. There is
Mm-hmm.
no going to three different um, tools to stitch it together. It's all in one place.
Yeah.
We have, with advanced investigation, we have the ability for you to determine the blast radius of the problem,
Mm.
and we also have this discover dashboard that helps surface um, potentially bad behavior before it has actually done anything bad. So, this approach of the Vectra attack signal intelligence platform to Azure
Mm.
yields phenomenal results that our customers are now starting to reap the benefits of.
Yeah, yeah, very important just to immediately know who is behind the activity and be able to find it, investigate it, and stop it at speed, which is what we talked about. Like we're catching up and staying ahead of attackers.
That's right.
So, yeah. And our solution is also agentless, and our MXDR is also here to help offload the SOX burden and help you manage your environment. So that's also helpful. And with that, let's wrap this episode up. And thank you so much, Gokul, for joining me. Very helpful insight into Azure Cloud threat surface. And thanks everyone for joining as well. If you haven't checked out other of our Vectra AI podcast episodes, feel free to check it out. And we are also on Spotify. And with that, thank you so much, everyone, for again for joining us, and hope to see you on the next one. Bye.
Thank you, Tiff.